Minister, distinguished guests, colleagues, students. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. And it's truly an honor for SIPA and for LASA to host Minister Pacheco with us. I don't know if you know, but Minister Pacheco has been changing the energy scenario in Chile by fostering renewable energies and opening the bidding systems in Chile. So, at least for SIPA, it's something we have to look at it as future policy leaders. And we are really happy to have you here, and we're going to listen to you in very detail. Now, Ezequiel Lopez is going to talk on behalf of LABA.
Yeah. On behalf of Columbia Business School too, and the Latin American Business Association that is called LABA, we would also like to thank you for coming today. It's a pleasure to have you here. From a business perspective and an energy perspective, Chile ranks today as the 7th country in renewable energy production among developed countries, and around 60% of the energy production comes from renewable resources, which is pretty unique. Last year, for example, global companies such as EDF Suez or Abengoa won contracts to supply energy for the next decade, and they will now compete with local companies such as Endesa or Colbún in Chile. I would like to conclude with Chile's policies, and the Minister's policies have made Chile a source of renewable production. They have generate a great source of competition within the country, and we hope that the impact of that policies make the prices of energy go down and also increase competition and reduce the environmental impact. With no further ado, Mr. Minister, please join us.
Okay, thanks. Am I allowed to take off my jacket? Go ahead. Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here for many reasons, many good professional reasons. I have high respect for this school and for what you're doing not only here in this part of the world, but also in Latin America and in Chile. And second, because I have some good family reasons as well. My daughter Paula studied here in SIPA, so she asked me to be sure that I could take some pictures of all of you today. So that's something I'm going to do at the end of this session. I was not very sure what was the format of this presentation, so I've prepared some kind of notes which I would like to share with you, and probably then we can have the opportunity for a Q&A. How much time do we have? An hour? Okay, so I don't think I will speak more than 15-20 minutes, if you allow me, and then we can go to questions and answers. Chile, una loca geografía, is the title of a famous Chilean essay. Literally, this means Chile, a crazy geography. You could also call it a geographical extravaganza. The winds are such that popular mythology holds that in some parts of the country, they have been seen to uplift a whole regiment to the air. Torrential waters reign supreme. The brightness of its deserts is proverbial to the extent that locals swear they have never seen a cloud in their lives. The deep forest created during the last ice age 2 million years ago are among the oldest on the planet. The initial development of energy in Chile was based on renewable resources. Between 1945 and 1980, hydroelectricity and firewood accounted for up to 80% of the matrix on a yearly basis, the remainder being provided by coal. The vocation of Chile as a land of renewable energy was unchecked until the privatizations of the 80s, when the matrix became much more dependent on fossil fuels. Between 1980 and 2000, short-term decisions by the new private operators based energy growth on the construction of coal-fired units and also on natural gas from Argentina. This model met with an abrupt end in 2007 when Argentina cut off the supply of natural gas contracted by Chile due to a lack of investment in Argentina's energy facilities. Chile is a country that has experienced sustained economic growth and has the certain hope of achieving the status of a developed country in the near future. We have covered a large part of this goal already, and in fact, the country's per capita income rose from around $10,000 in 1970 to over $23,000 in 2014. In 1975, 50% of the Chilean population lived below the poverty line. By 2014, this variable dropped to 7.8%, a deep reduction in less than 4 decades. Chile needs to source and secure a stable supply of energy to step up production and competitiveness. But the country lacks significant reserves of natural gas, coal, and oil, and imports over 60% of the energy it consumes. The impact caused by the lack of sufficient generation and transmission causes enormous difficulties. It has also led to the rise in electricity and gas prices, which are currently among the highest in the world. Chile probably has the highest cost of energy in Latin America. Chile has been particularly successful at promoting the entry of renewable energies, especially photovoltaic, wind, and small hydro power plants. In addition to this, during 2017, our first geothermal facility will come on stream. This is probably one of my preferred slides. It shows the planet, and you can see that in 3 of the top 5 places with highest solar radiation in the world, they are in Chile, measured by kilowatt hour per square meter per day. So this is the place. This is the right place to be if you want to generate energy, electricity with photovoltaic panels. Electricity delivered to the consumer in an environment marked by reduced competition and scant public support results in higher inequality. The energy issue is no longer a simple technical problem of engineering solutions. I have high respect for engineers. I was a professor at the School of Engineering in Chile, but still I'm convinced that energy has become a social, environmental, and cultural problem for which neither industry nor the state were prepared. Let's recap. Chile imports more than half its energy consumption. The prices are exorbitant. There is little competition. Companies that generate and transmit and distribute power are under a lot of stress, and the institutional framework to make changes and corrections is mandatory. To revive and strengthen the energy industry in Chile, the government proposed a long-term horizon centered on what is known as the energy agenda. Achieving the industry's social legitimacy to encourage the commitment and support of citizens in its development is one of the agenda's main objectives. Therefore, we launched the initiative after a period of intense meetings, committees, conferences, workshops, seminars with ordinary citizens, industry organizations, NGOs, research centers, universities, environmental groups, municipalities, consulting firms, ethnic minorities, and many other participants. The document was assembled and published in May 2014 around a major aspiration. This was to create an industry whose objective was the provision of reliable, sustainable, inclusive, and affordable energy. We also proposed a stronger state presence in the energy sector, in the understanding that as guarantor of the common good, the state concurs in the genesis and updating of institutions and their adjustment to the strategic needs of the country. We are not talking about a leviathan represented by an overwhelming and voracious state, nor an entity to establish inefficient energy subsidies. On the contrary, Chile has been able to develop all of the renewable energy sector with no subsidies. The only subsidy has been nature. So it's a natural subsidy of having good winds, good sun and a lot of volcanoes and mountains. On the contrary, our aim is to establish a strategic and mediator role representing the nation as a whole to help guide the industry back to a more effective direction. Chile is among the most liberal countries in the world. Keep in mind that the state ownership of power generation in Europe is 45%. In the US, approximately 20%. China and India, the state-owned enterprises exceed 60%. Chile has only one state-owned enterprise in the energy sector, that's called ENAP, Empresa Nacional de Petróleo. I'm the chairman of the company, but I have to tell you that we have no oil, no gas in Chile. So this is a company that really manages a very small amount of oil and gas produced in Chile, and most of it is imported, so it's more of a trading company. Our country does not have any relevant enterprise, which as I mentioned, and therefore we exploit only downgraded oil and gas deposits in the Strait of Magellan, in the southernmost part of the country. Let me tell you a bit about the energy agenda. The first goal of the energy agenda is to reduce the marginal cost of energy by 30% during the current period of government of President Bachelet, which is a 4-year term mandate, goes from March 2014 to March 2018. This objective is to open up the grid to further competition. At the moment, 3 companies, Endesa, Colbún, and AES, control 76% of the installed capacity in the Central South system, called SIC, and 98% of the system of the North is controlled by 3 companies as well. The agenda commitment implies marginal cost will fall to less than $105 per megawatt hour by 2007, from an average of $151 per megawatt hour in 2013. The second goal of the agenda is to reduce the prices resulting from the bidding process to contract the provision of electricity for regulated consumers. Half of the market of Chile is what we call regulated market, which is mainly householders and small consumers, and the other half is a free market where generators and distributors negotiate the terms and conditions of the contract. Last year, we had 17 supply deals for 13,000 gigawatt hour a year, and with a price of $107 per megawatt hour, which is around 17% lower than the price recorded in December 2013. So we've been quite successful in achieving this second objective. The third goal of the agenda aims to boost investment in projects of non-conventional renewable energy to represent 20% of generation by 2025. We are moving fast in creating new capacity. A year ago, when President Bachelet was elected to office, there were 28 power plants of different technologies under construction, with a capacity of 1,949 megawatts. This is my favorite slide. It shows the day when President Bachelet took office in March 2014, and it shows how 1 year after we have not 28 projects under construction, but 42, and not 1,949 megawatts under construction, but 3,876 megawatts under construction. So clearly, there has been a lot of appetite for new projects, a lot of investment, and lots of newcomers investing in new technologies, in new places, new locations. We aim to step up production of renewables as a whole, adding conventional hydro plants. The objective is to increase the overall participation of renewables to 60%. Renewables meaning non-conventional renewables and conventional. Conventional are mainly big hydroelectric power stations. The share of hydroelectricity in our electrical grid dropped from 48% to 28% in the last 10 years. Clearly a country that has a lot of water. We've had lots of difficulties to continue to grow through the generation of hydroelectricity stations. We have also seen a significant lack of new hydroelectric infrastructure compared to the growth of other more expensive and less clean stations. We are also focusing on the development of small-scale hydropower plants. Chile has only about 70 mini hydros, or small-scale hydropower plants. 70. Germany has 7,500. Adding more of these plants represents a great opportunity to bring new capacity online and give us greater autonomy and lower prices. This place is called Aysén. It's in the Patagonia. We have the two largest rivers of the country there, the Baker and Pascua. For this progress to occur, it is crucial to have a robust transmission system that is able to connect generating stations located far from electric consumption centers to the grid. It is not enough to have extensive radiation at the Atacama Desert, which I already mentioned, the solar radiation, to generate solar energy if we do not have transmission lines. And you can see that the country has 4 transmission systems. 2 are very small in the southernmost part of the country. The 2 most important ones are the SIC and the SIN. The SIN goes up to Tal, and the SIC starts in Copiapó. So we have these 2 systems which are not interconnected. And that's what we are trying to do now by investing, and we have already agreed on the technical solution for this. Coming Thursday, 2 days from now, 3 days from now, I will sign formally the decree of the interconnection of both systems. Another point of the agenda is the promotion of energy efficiency to achieve a 20% reduction in energy. Clearly, what we are saying is by 2025, we should be able to reduce demand, electricity demand, by 20% compared to doing nothing. This is a very ambitious goal. I don't think we have been very successful in our last years to do so. So that's why our plan is to pass a law, an Energy Efficiency Act to Congress to correct these shortcomings and establish a clear framework of action for households, private companies, and the state. The energy agenda is also committed to strengthening ENAP. ENAP is the state-owned enterprise which I mentioned. And what we are now committed to do is to allow ENAP to generate electricity for the grid through a law that will allow ENAP to partner with foreign partners, non-incumbent, newcomers, so as to attract new investment, new players, and have joint ventures with ENAP as a minority shareholder, having the new partners as controlling and managing partners of these JVs. 2014 will also be a year where we've been working on the energy agenda, which we've called Energía 2050. And this first stage of this project involved over 3,500 people, conducted more than 100 workshops and public meetings throughout Chile. All this will result in a strategy endowed with milestones and targets for 2035 and a roadmap for 2050. The participatory focus is ambitious, holistic, and not without risks. Chile is perhaps the first country in the world to engage in a real overhaul of its energy policy while seeking at the same time the social legitimacy of its energy projects in a world dominated by the extensive use of internet and other social networks. As I said earlier, the energy problem has ceased to be a purely technical problem and become a challenge of social legitimacy. This is a long and complex process It requires the education of civil society in the rudiments of energy to understand the risks and benefits associated with different modalities. Simultaneously, this process should be complemented with companies committing to strong environmental and social policies reflected by its officers and employees, and not as a simple promotional facade. This process is reinforced by the willingness of companies and communities to talk, discuss, and reach agreements freely. We must deploy projects with a clear awareness of their social impact, so that businesses do not end up ultimately engaged in lengthy disputes in courts or communities in distress. Probably the last issue we'd like to cover relates to global warming and climate change. Doubts about the existence of global warming and climate change probably at this stage have already been revoked by the scientific community. Chile is a low emitter of carbon emissions, only 0.2% of total global emissions, but our emissions have increased 40% in the last 10 years, mainly due to a growing carbon-based energy sector. However, the country has been at the forefront on climate issues. It was the first country to transact carbon credits for clean development mechanisms, and the first to register a climate policy at the United Nations. This year, Chile passed 2 new green taxes designed to reduce emissions, and as I mentioned earlier, Chile installed new capacity for unconventional renewables in 2014, doubling our historical levels. So Chile's native energy resources include an abundance of renewable options. Therefore, the country has a great potential of securing a successful transition to a green economy. In this process, we will expand our role for a reliable consumer of solar, wind, biomass, hydro, and other clean technologies to a platform for the introduction of these technologies in the Latin American market. We believe that Chile is positioned as the leader of the energy transition towards renewables and to energy efficiency in the region. And we would like to consolidate that perspective and that role. And that's why we are working hard under President Bachelet's leadership to achieve these objectives. I'll be happy to comment now. What are your concerns? What are the issues? What are the questions that you may have? And let's try to make it conversation.
To ask you about you said that Chile doesn't need any incentives because we have the natural resources. But recently we have this feed-in tariff where you can install for residential purposes solar energy, and you can sell your energy. Do you think that in the future, as we expect to get lower prices, is that incentive enough in order to expand our renewable energies? Solar energies.
Yeah. Well, at this stage, what we have in Chile is a law which we call the net metering law, which allows you to install your photovoltaic panel in the roof, or wherever you want to do it. And then, whenever you are not using that energy, you can connect to the grid and sell it to the grid. The price they would pay to you for this energy is the same price that they are charging you for the energy. Okay? So, for practical purposes, you are a kind of a pro-consumer, producer and consumer of energy. Whenever you are at home, and you are probably consuming all of the energy produced by the panels, then you're going to be the consumer. Whenever you leave your house and you have only your fridge demanding energy there, because I assume that you have turned off all of the lights and the chargers and all that, but then you can start to sell. In Chile, we've had this only for the last 6 months, This was a regulation that has been established in the last year. It's been slowly moving, because obviously it requires some investment for the panels. And what I believe is that more and more, not only this net metering solution, but all of the distributed generation solutions and all of the off-grid solutions will continue to grow. It's something very similar to what has happened with mobile phones. Probably, I don't think many of you have a fixed line at home. And probably all of you are offline. So probably more and more you will see people solving this kind of request through distributed energy solution, including net metering. We don't have any subsidies for net metering. The only regulation is that the distribution companies are obliged to pay to you for the energy that you are supplying to the grid, the same price that they charge you for the energy that you consume from the grid. So that's something I believe is going to continue to grow. In addition, we're going to continue to promote distributed energy solutions through off-grid solutions and through solutions that are closer to the places where energy is being consumed.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco, for being here today and for the nice overview. Let me introduce myself. My name is Vasil Thanakis, and I had the pleasure to teach your daughter 10 years ago about air quality and preventing air pollution. So I'm so glad that she's following the best pathway towards reducing pollution, that is to put more renewable into the electricity grid. And I collaborated with the University of Chile and CERC and the University of LASA. We have some studies looking together with some potentials. And I hope that what we present will be just the beginning of something very inspiring. I think you are where we were here about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had a 200 megawatt of solar in the United States. Now we have 20 gigawatt. And back in 2007, 2008, we just published, we translated in 11 languages, a kind of bold, ambitious plan for transforming the energy grid in the US into one based on solar, primarily and wind. And it's happening slowly. Now, I know that you have some roadblocks in Chile. Like there are concerns with utilities about the effect on conventional generators, the running rates on conventional generators, since you have variable energy from wind and solar. And you have also concerns about the effects on the environment and the social issues. And I want you to know that we are here to help, because we went over this, and there were real issues and many perceptions, and it takes a lot of engineering work, but also the right dissemination towards policy. So I'm glad we're here.
Well,
I hope we can help.
Well, I appreciate your comment, because I try to show you nice pictures about the country. I hope you enjoy them. But this job is not as nice as the pictures. I usually comment to some of my colleagues, for example, the Minister of Infrastructure. Whenever you get to a place, people applaud you and welcome you because new roads are coming, new bridges, and new solutions for people. Not to mention when the Minister of Housing arrives. People are also very excited and very happy because houses look better and so on. The Minister of Sports is very popular in Chile. Whenever she arrives to a place, it means that you will have more infrastructure for practicing sports, and you will have new ideas on championships of all sorts of sports. When I arrive to a place, nobody welcomes me. Not in my backyard.
Not yet, right? But
Not
it's
in my
going to
backyard. So what I think would be very interesting for us to continue to work with the school is how to build that legitimacy, how to make sure that people realize that when you arrive to a place to develop an energy project, this can be the start of development of tourism, of forestry, fishery, cattle, and others. Because we see many places where you cannot have that kind of projects. You cannot have that local development because there's no energy, or energy is very expensive. So how to build this relationship, this association between energy projects and local development is something very, very interesting, very challenging, and will be something that really we could work, and we should work more with people like yourselves.
If I may add, that we're working very close to the industry. Actually, the person next to me, he's a graduate PhD, recent PhD, he's working now with one of the leading US companies for solar. And
we know them.
We learn from each other. So we help each other, and this is the kind of public and private enterprise that can push the economy forward. I think that's a great paradigm. I mean, you have a free economy there, so probably you are even
very important, because at the end of the day, what we've learned also is that companies need to learn how to do this. Because in the past, companies used to arrive to a place with, this is my project, this is the machinery, the equipment, and they just start to move earth. Right. And now what we're telling companies is, you need to understand that these old days are gone. Communities need to learn about the project in advance, at an early stage. You need to recognize that there is a lot of asymmetry of information between the company and the communities. You need to close that gap. You need to share the information with the communities, and you need to really improve your project through the input that you receive from the communities. So social management and what we call the soft engineering of the projects is becoming more and more important. These are very capital intensive projects, and therefore they have an impact on the communities, and that's the kind of thing that you need to work with the communities in advance and at an early stage.
Hi, again, thank you very much for coming today. I actually work for SMBC, which is one of the major leading national project finance banks.
You work for, what's the name of the company?
SMBC.
Okay.
And as was in the presentation, we were part of the Teller and of the power grids in Chile. And given your expansion plan in the renewable sector, is the coming PPA bids going to be technology specific? And in the coming bids, what's the size of the investments? And just connecting with the previous question, are you comfortable with the current PPA structure and the bidding structure, both on the bank side and the company side developing all those projects?
Well, this bid that we had last December was for 13,000 gigawatts hour, as I mentioned, per year. The coming bid will be, again, March 2016. It's going to be probably for 12,000 gigawatt hour a year. We would like, first of all, to see new players. That's why we are now passing this act in Congress, which will allow the state-owned enterprise, ENAP, to partner with new player, so that they can submit a proposal at the bid as well. So we would like to see more competition. We will continue to be technologically neutral, which means no subsidies and also no discretionary type of terms in the bids, so that we continue to develop the PPAs, which is the power purchase agreements, for new projects, because these are contracts for 15, 20 years. So if you get a power purchase agreement, you will immediately be able to build the project, because all of the energy that will be in this auction is energy that you need to start to supply in 2021. So it's next year, the auction, but you need to have the project running in 5 years from then. So once you have the PPA, you can start to finance and to get all the permitting and the construction. So 5 years sounds quite reasonable to this. I would say that we would like to see more hydro. We would like to see more hydro, especially small and medium scale hydro, because we know that Chile has a huge potential for hydroelectricity. And we know that in the past, as I mentioned, 40 years ago, renewable energy was 80% of the electricity matrix. And now it's probably something around 40 or less. So we could move from 40 to 20 to 60 by 2025. We would like to see more of that as well. I think more competition, more non-conventional renewables, solar, wind, biomass, and geothermal, and more hydro. Technologically neutral, with ENAP being a minority shareholder, non-controlling and non-operating partner of some big new company. Who is supposed to manage all the rest?
Why do you need an app in the shareholder structure?
We need an app because of the fact that, as I mentioned, in the central system, we have 3 players with 78%. In the northern system, we have 3 players with 90% more of the generation. And lots of big players have contacted us saying, I want to do business in Chile, but I'm not there. I don't know the country. I would like to do business with a partner. What do you think about partnering with one of the incumbents? And we're telling them, look, this is not a good idea. We cannot say no, but we can just somehow express our desire that we would like to have more players than what we have today. So what we're using an app for is to attract these newcomers, to help them to do business in Chile in a position like a minority shareholder. Something very similar happened in Chile when the natural gas from Argentina was no longer supplied. We had to go and buy natural gas from overseas and bring it not through the Andean mountains, it was from the Argentinian side, but from the ocean. We had to